G'day everyone, let's have a look at how I replaced the front rotors and pads on my 1989 C4 Corvette. I've lifted the whole car up onto jack stands and I've taken the wheels off using a rattle gun. You can probably see the old rotor is pretty worn and it has some pretty deep grooves. Now, I started by removing the two bolts behind the rotor indicated by the arrow, as you can see. Now these bolts are a little bit tough, so using some WD-40 and a long breaker bar will make this a lot easier. After you've cracked those nuts, it's as simple as using a regular ratchet. So top and bottom there you can see. The bottom one's a little bit harder to do depending on how high you've jacked it up, and there you go, look, they're both undone. Now, I prefer to keep the rotor still attached to the hub to get some more leverage, and you might find it easier to screw back some wheel nuts onto the rotor to prevent the rotor from slipping off. You can see you give it a little bit of force and it should just pop off like that. There you go. Now, because the brake line is short, you'll need to place this on a box or something just to make sure it doesn't get stretched off. Then the rotor will come right off like that. You place it to one side. I found that the first pad should come free pretty easily with a small hit with a hammer. I found I had to give it a few little light taps here and there, as you can see, and then it pops out. And the clamp should come free as well. You should be able to just wriggle the pad free. And as you can see, there isn't much meat left on this pad. We'll have to keep that one for later. I found the second pad was a little bit harder to remove, but if I gave a little tap with the hammer and a little socket, it came free relatively easily. And once that's free, you can see you've got the clamp, the pad, as well as a little pin at the bottom. Make sure you don't lose this pin because it's very important in keeping those pads within that clamp. Now, compressing the caliper will cause our brake booster to overflow, so we'll need to remove some brake fluid using a syringe. I found that if I removed enough so that the liquid is at the minimum line, it was a good enough guess. Now, using the old pad from earlier, we can place this into the caliper on top of the little pistons, and we can use this to compress those two pistons back into place so that the newer, thicker pads can fit. Now, I used a big wood clamp with a screw thread. It slowly pushes these pistons into place as I tighten this clamp. Now, as I tighten this clamp, this will increase the level on the brake booster, so you just got to make sure that doesn't overflow. And there you go, she's ready. I sourced my brake pads from Bremtech. You can see they look quite nice, painted all red. Obviously I picked the red ones because they look better, but you can see that they're a lot thicker, so that's why we had to push those calipers in. Now the new pads should clip right into the caliper after a little bit of fiddling. You can see here that I didn't have to worry about the bracket just yet, but you should hear a click when they're fully installed. It is also important to make sure that the pads are in the right direction. So you can see the little hole on the top of the pads towards the left hand side. Now you should be able to slide the bracket back on from the brake line side of the calipers. You can see on the right side of the screen that the pads haven't fit in perfectly just yet. That's because the pin from earlier should fit in by pushing down the bracket. You can see here that the pin has fit in perfectly. I got the new rotors from Disc Brakes Australia, and you can see the difference in the old from the new. You'll need to spray the exposed surface with a brake cleaner to get rid of any coatings that the manufacturer may have put on. Now make sure you only spray this on the braking surface, as this spray will strip paint. Just give it a little wipe there, and that should be enough. Now you can see that my hubs are pretty rusty, so I had to give these a pretty good clean. You can see here that I've used some fine grit sandpaper just to get that surface rust off, and then I hit it with some brake cleaner. You'll find that you will have issues if you don't clean these quite well. As you can see, the brake cleaner helped to rub this off quite nicely. As you can see, I've pushed the rotor onto the calipers, but you might find it to be easier if you attach the calipers with the rotor attached to the hub. With both attached, you'll need to rebolt these calipers as shown. From this back view here, you can see that I only tightened up the top bolt only a little bit. That made putting in that bottom bolt a lot easier. Once they're both in, you can just tighten them up. It's good to go. Make sure that these are tightened to the right torque settings as well. Look at that, she doesn't look half bad. Too bad the stock rims will be covering them. Well, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Ciao.